I'm Jeff Matlow. Welcome to the best leadership podcast ever. Oh my God. I love that you're here. I love that you showed up to the best leadership podcast ever. You know what that means? It makes you the best leadership podcast listener ever. And you are, because that's how much you mean to me. As I said in that fancy schmancy intro, which I have to say I love, my name is Jeff Matlow. I am not a leadership coach. I am not a consultant. I am not a therapist. But if you combine all three of those as one, you probably get something around what I do. I help you understand the patterns that used to work in your life to help you succeed and now are working against you. And guess what? You don't even know it. And it's actually what I want to talk about today. And I'm going to start with a little bit about me and my wife. You see, in our family, my wife is the COO. Me, I'm mostly VP of Food Services, and I also oversee shipping and handling, though I'm not sure what my title is there. Probably coordinator, maybe manager if I'm lucky. I think I have a review coming up soon. We'll see how I do. Keep your fingers crossed for me. Anyway, my wife handles all the logistics in our family. She does the research, she makes the reservations, and schedules all the appointments. She coordinates our daughter's calendar of what she's going to do, when she's going to do it, and how she's going to get there and back. I help when I'm asked. Don't get me wrong. I'm not lazy, not in the slightest. It's just that day-to-day family planning isn't really top of mind for me as much as it is for her. My wife tells herself that she's just better at the organizational stuff. And honestly, she is. Because she's been doing it for the 13 years we've been married. Here's what happened. She started doing the planning because I kept forgetting. It wasn't malicious. I just didn't have the mental load to remember to do the stuff. I was honestly too consumed with work. But that behavior created an environment where I didn't need to remember. She would always handle it. Or she'd remind me to do it. Either way, the system worked. Which meant my brain stopped tracking those things completely. After all, why do I need to build a habit for something that's already handled? Rhetorical question. Don't answer that. This whole thing meant that my wife had to do even more remembering, because suddenly I wasn't just forgetting, I literally didn't know what needed to be done in the first place. And that created an environment where asking me to do something required my wife to notice it needed doing, remember to ask me, explain what needed to happen, check that it got done, and probably redo the parts of it that I didn't do the way she expected. Which means it genuinely became easier for my wife to just do the things herself. And there is our loop. My wife believes if I don't do it, it doesn't get done. And I believe she's better at that stuff anyway. Both statements are completely true. Now my wife thinks I'm incompetent at life management, and I think she's a control freak who won't let me help. Neither of those is right. We're both just stuck in a pattern environment loop where my wife's competent behavior created the environment which made my incompetent behavior inevitable. And the longer it runs, the more proof we both have that this is just who we are. And the crazy thing about this, it's also happening to you and you're not even aware of it. I call this the pattern environment loop. If you've been listening to me for a little bit, you may have heard me refer to that a few times. Your behavior creates an environment which supports the behavior, which strengthens the environment, and on it goes in a never-ending circle. Now, my story with my wife is far from unique, right? In fact, my entire leadership coaching business is focused on exposing and transforming the pattern environment loops that limit people's potential. Want examples? Good, because boy oh boy, do I have examples. There's one client that comes to my mind right away. She's a first-time VP who got promoted for being an exceptional worker. She always knows the answers. So now she leads a team that constantly comes to her with every little problem because they can't seem to think for themselves. Or there's my client, the founder, who built his company on intuition and rapid decisions. And now he drowns in approvals because he doesn't know how to delegate. Or the COO client of mine who survived by being indispensable and now hasn't taken a real vacation in 4 years because everything falls apart the moment she's gone. You see, they all originally came to me with the same basic complaint. Their complaint is, I work in a problematic environment. One thought the team wasn't ready, another thought the company outgrew its infrastructure, or the culture is too toxic. All of that might be true, but none of it actually matters because it's not the problem. Each of those people created their environment because of their behavior. It's classic pattern environment loop. And this is what you're doing. And we had a conversation not too long ago that you may remember about the frog in the boiling water. It's not the conversation you're thinking of, but you know the metaphor. You drop a frog in boiling water and it jumps out. But if you put it in cold water and slowly turn up the heat, it stays until it's too late to leave and it dies. Now, the story actually is scientifically wrong, and a lot of frogs have been killed by people they think it's accurate, but the metaphor is actually really good. We don't notice gradual change. We don't see our environment shift around us when it's done in small incremental degrees. We just wake up one day wondering how the hell we got here. But here's what the metaphor misses. You're not the frog, you're the chef. You are the one turning up the heat. You just don't realize it. Now, you might not consider yourself a micromanager because you didn't start by micromanaging. You started by being thorough, by being the person who would catch errors before they shipped or fix problems before clients saw them. You built that reputation, which made you invaluable. And the behavior worked really well, so your environment rewarded it. It's why you got promoted. It's why you got more responsibility. Your thoroughness became the thing everyone counted on. It became your identity. And soon, your team started doing what all teams do when someone always catches their errors. They stopped trying to catch the errors themselves. It's not out of laziness. It's out of efficiency. Just the same as I'm not lazy in not helping my wife figure out the day-to-day operations of her family, it's just efficiency. As far as your workers, why should they spend an hour polishing the particulars of a PowerPoint when you're going to rewrite the damn thing anyway? Your behavior created a new environment. The environment is one where your review was the actual quality control and everyone else's work was just an initial draft. Which means you have to work even harder to maintain the same standard you're used to. And that reinforces your team's belief that you're the one who makes things great, which in turn makes it impossible for you to step back without everything falling apart. You get it? That's the pattern environment loop. Your pattern creates an environment, and the environment reinforces your pattern. And the loop keeps tightening until the very strengths that lifted you up become the chains that hold you down. The worst part of this is that it feels like you're just responding to reality. When you see work that isn't good enough, you fix it. That's just being responsible. And when the founder sees decisions that need to be made, he makes them. That's just being a leader. Or when the VP sees questions that need answers, She answers them, "That's just being helpful." Every single action feels like the right response to the situation. But every single action is also creating more of the situation you're responding to. You're not stuck in a pattern because you're weak. Let's put that aside. You're stuck because the pattern used to be your strength, and your environment won't let you stop that pattern. Here's what makes this so hard to interrupt. It's that you don't see the environment you're creating, you only see the behavior you're doing. And this is exactly why $356 billion is spent every year on corporate training programs, and most of it is utterly useless. These three guys, Beer, Finstrom, and Schrader, wrote a paper called The Great Training Robbery. It was published in the Harvard Business Review. And what they found after studying training at companies around the world is that many training initiatives fail to produce lasting change because that gravitational pull of the existing environment causes people to revert back to their previous behavior. Do you hear that? The training you're getting, the leadership training you're getting, will only last for 2 to 4 weeks because it's not changing the environment that you're in. And that environment will pull you back to your previous behaviors. It's really important for you to recognize your pattern environment loops, or else you're just going to repeat the same thing over and over again. That's why it's a loop. But knowing the loop isn't going to fix it. I mean, you could be told you're a micromanager. Maybe you even believe it. So maybe you try to delegate more. But when you do, the quality is going to drop. Not because your team is incapable of being better, but because the environment you built is based on the assumption that you are the last line of defense. And just removing yourself is not going to magically self-correct the environment. It's going to collapse it. Now, that's not proof that you need to micromanage. It's proof that your environment was built to require micromanagement. Awareness tells you there's a problem. It doesn't tell you how to build the environment that's keeping the problem alive, but at least you know the problem. You don't break a pattern environment loop by changing your behavior. You break it by changing the environment. Remember how I said I am a coach, a consultant, and a therapist all rolled into one? Because lasting change requires understanding the behavior, the systems, and the environment, and addressing them all at once in order for that change to stick. If you don't do that, you're just another statistic in that Beer, Finstrom, and Schrader study of the leadership training that crumbles when it hits the environment. So changing your behavior isn't going to break the pattern environment loop. The way to break the pattern environment loop is to change the environment. The micromanager doesn't actually need to trust the team more. They need an environment where the team's work matters before it reaches their desk. And the founder's team doesn't need more decision-making authority. They need an environment where their thinking is engaged before the decision is made. And the VP's team doesn't need fewer questions. They need an environment where not knowing the answer is a signal to figure it out, not a signal to ask the VP. None of that happens by just stopping the pattern. It happens by building an environment where the pattern isn't required. So here are the uncomfortable questions I have for you. You ready? You may want to write these down. What patterns are you running right now that used to be your strength and may be working against you? And what environment have you created that keeps those patterns necessary? And what would have to change in that environment, not in your behavior, in the environment, for that pattern to stop being required? Because the thing you think makes you indispensable is actually the thing keeping you stuck. Your strengths built the ball and chain, your environment locked it around your ankle. And until you change the environment, awareness just means you'll watch yourself doing it over and over again. Fortunately, I have the secret to how to change the environment. So if you want to break your pattern environment loop, you got to start by diagnosing the pattern and then interrupting that pattern. I put on a leadership diagnostic workshop. It's free. It does exactly that for leaders at all levels of all size companies, from startup to global 100s. I'll put the link below. Sign up. Again, all free. It's for you. And you're going to walk away seeing things about your life you're never going to be able to unsee again. Thanks for listening. I appreciate you being here, and I'll talk to you next time. I'll see you at the workshop, right?